Alpha.
Hi, I'm Mark Baber and I'm the Technical Marketing Manager here in the UK and Ireland for Sony's Photo Channel. Now, I caught up earlier with one of our Europe Imaging Ambassadors, Will Burrard Lucas, and I asked him the question, what's in your kit bag?
Hi guys, I'm Will Burrard Lucas. I'm a wildlife photographer and also a Sony Europe Imaging Ambassador. And for my work, I mostly photograph wild animals in Africa.
So, Will, I know you spend a lot of time in Africa, so what kind of kit do you take with you?
Yeah, so this is my camera bag, one of my camera bags. This is one that I like because it fits a lot in, but it's also lightweight and good for hiking. And really, I can get everything I need in here. So let me show you. So depending on the project, I will usually take different lenses, different camera bodies, really depending on what I'm going to be photographing. But this is very much a generic setup, which is almost unchanged from project to project. And so I usually have two main camera bodies. And one will usually be an A9, which is a fast camera with blazing fast autofocus. And I'll use this generally on moving subjects like flying birds or a running animal. And really, it's all about the autofocus performance with this. And when I pair it with one of the native Sony lenses, like this is the 70-200 2.8, or a long telephoto prime like the 600 or 400 f2.8, then I get the maximum performance out of the autofocus. And really, I find I can track almost anything. So the A9 is my camera that's really built for speed, built for moving subjects. And then my second camera here that I have is the A7 R4. And this is the camera that gives me maximum resolution. And this is something I'll generally use probably more often than the A9 actually, when I've got an animal that's more stationary and I'm trying to get something like a portrait. This gives me the option if I need to be able to crop in, and it's not quite as fast, but it's definitely fast enough for most of the time that I need it. And again, it's got great autofocus, so I don't have to worry about missing the focus, even when I'm shooting with a very shallow depth of field like these lenses offer me, particularly these long telephoto primes. One of the reasons I really like them is because they give me an incredibly shallow depth of field, which when I'm out in the wild photographing an animal and I want to get an impactful portrait, I'll often use that shallow depth of field to blur out all the distractions in the background or the foreground, because often these wild habitats are very messy. So having a shallow depth of field means I can really isolate my subject, capture portraits that really pop. But the other side of that is I have to have very, very accurate autofocus to make sure I don't miss the focus on the animal's face. So yeah, this is a camera body that I'll more often use for those portraits. And I often like to have the grip on my camera bodies because when I put them on a long lens, I find it just a bit easier to handle, particularly in portrait mode if I've got the vertical grip. It also gives me additional battery life, so I don't have to worry, or I almost never have to worry these days about the batteries running out, because that's been improved a lot in the latest generation of Sony batteries. So two camera bodies typically, and then I'll generally have the 24-70 f2.8, which I'll use for more contextual shots showing habitats and landscapes. And then I've got the 70-200 f2.8, which is often one that I'll use for larger animals like elephants, or to show animals in their environment where I want to have that sort of medium range to sort of zoom out a bit, capture more context to my photos. And then for those frame filling portraits and behavioral shots is when I'll usually use the longer lens. So depending on the species, it might be the 600 f4 or the 400 f2.8, depending on how large the animal is and how close I think I'll be able to get. And usually I am going on a trip to specifically focus on one subject. And so I'll know beforehand whether it's sort of a 600 type project or a 400 project. And these new lenses are really what persuaded me really to change over to Sony permanently. Before these lenses came out, I always needed a fast telephoto prime, but Sony didn't have one until this was released last year. But since this came out, this combined with the focus speed of the A9 superseded everything I was using before. And then because it's so lightweight, I was able to start shooting in ways I wasn't before. So handheld with a 600 prime is now perfectly doable, very easy. And yeah, that combined with the sharpness and the speed of the camera autofocus means I'm now able to get shots that I simply wasn't able to get before. So I really love these lightweight fast primes that have come out. So that's the main gear, and then I've also got a whole load of other bits and pieces. So I often do a lot with remote cameras as well. So I'll usually have some of my old cameras. In here I've got this is my A7R2, which I've had for years. And so I'll usually have this or my A7R3 or even something like an A6500, one of the smaller crop body cameras. And I'll use these for remote photography, and that involves getting my camera really close to my subjects and then using a wide angle lens. So I get frame filling portrait still, but with that wide angle perspective, it's a much more intimate view. And I'll usually do that in one of two different ways. I'll either put this on a remote control buggy, which I've created called BeetleCam, and then I can drive this sort of away from me. I can be controlling it remotely. And with mirrorless, it has the advantage that I can take the HDMI out from the camera and transmit it back to a little portable screen that I have, so I can see exactly what the camera is seeing, compose my shots precisely, and I can also control some of the camera settings remotely. So I'm able to get really close, really intimate perspectives without disturbing the animals using that technique. The other thing I'll do sometimes is use a sensor like this and set up a camera trap. So I'll position a camera on an animal trail or next to a waterhole in a strong protected housing, and I might leave it for weeks or months at a time. And then when an animal comes past and is in the sort of position that I've determined for my composition, the sensor will then wake up and trigger the camera automatically. And that's another way I can get very close up, intimate perspective of some of the shyer, rarer creatures. But yeah, a lot of that gear doesn't fit in my camera bag, so I usually have a case or two of camera trap equipment and my BeetleCam separately. I usually have a few other bits and pieces. This is just a portable hard drive and backup device which I use just to keep my cards backed up in the field. Particularly with the remote camera, I want to keep backing it up in case the camera gets stolen by a lion and I lose all my pictures. So keeping my photos backed up in the field is important. And then let's close this up. And then in the top I can just keep my other bits and pieces. So what we have in here, that's all the chargers, dongles, memory cards, things like that. Flashlight. I do a lot of working at night. That for me is one of these sort of final frontiers in wildlife photography, where there's a lot of animals that haven't been photographed a lot before. And so I try, using the low light performance of Sony's particularly has really opened up this whole world of nocturnal wildlife photography. So I'm often working at night. And so yeah, carry a torch, head torch, and then this is just a little power pack which I can then use to either keep my phone or my cameras topped up if I need to in an emergency. What have we got in here? Just things like cleaning wipes, an airline toothbrush just in case I forget mine, a little multi-tool, various things. What was that? Anything else? Earplugs for sleeping when there's a lot of noise outside. And then inside here, just that's a screwdriver which I'm using all the time for BeetleCam and camera traps, bits and pieces. Headphones, pen, and then in here is usually something I put my sort of clothes in and stuff if I need to carry a jumper or fleece or a raincoat or something. And in the front, a small laptop, which obviously is important just for reviewing images in the field and backing things up. And then always I have at least 1 or 2 water bottles because it's generally pretty hot in Africa, so keeping hydrated is important. And always a cap or 2 strapped to the outside of the bag as well. So that's pretty much my typical setup for wildlife photography in Africa.
Will, that's really interesting, and thanks very much for sharing. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Where can we see more of your work?
So just search @WillBL on Instagram, Twitter. I'm also on Facebook, and my website is willbl.com.
Thanks, Will. All the best.
Thanks very much. Bye.